We'll call this meeting to order. This is the Committee of the Whole meeting for Morgantown City Council on Tuesday, February 24th at 7 p.m. We're at City Hall Chambers in 389 Spruce Street. Committee of the Whole meetings of the Morgantown City Council are intended to provide an opportunity for council to receive information, ask questions, and identify policy options in an informal setting. We take no official action at these meetings. At this Committee of the Whole meeting, we have the following items scheduled. First, we have a presentation for fiscal year 26-27 budget. City Manager.
Yes, Deputy Mayor, thank you. Our Finance Director, John Ferguson, will be presenting this year's proposed budget for your all's consideration. I will likely have some wrap-up comments when he is done with his presentation before we turn it over to Council. But John, if you don't mind.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. Best part of the night. John. What? Yes. Thank you. Appreciate that. Members of council, thank you for the opportunity to present the proposed fiscal year 2026-2027 budget. Now, before we get into any of the details in the presentation, I'd first like to begin by publicly acknowledging and expressing my personal and professional appreciation to council for their active engagement throughout this year's budget process. Thank you. Over the past several months, council members have dedicated significant time participating in small group budget workshops, reviewing materials in depth, and offering thoughtful input on our capital, agency, and our operating budgets. Your collaboration has been instrumental in shaping the balanced budgets we are presenting today. The constructive dialogue, questions, and the direction that you have provided during this entire process has helped ensure that these budgets reflect both the city's strategic priorities and our shared commitment to financial management. Thank you. Now, I had to print it off in big font so I could read it. When we get into our fiscal context and strategy, now, the proposed budget has been developed with caution and a strong commitment to financial stewardship of public resources. It reflects the city's obligation to continue delivering high-quality service while acknowledging the fiscal challenges we are currently facing here in the city of Morgantown. The budget accounts for key financial pressures include flat and/or declining revenue streams, rising operational and personnel costs, and increasing demands on city services. Overall, these factors underscore the need for careful financial planning and prudent decision-making. In our long-term strategy with this budget, while addressing our immediate budgetary pressures, this plan also begins a deliberate transition towards a more structurally balanced and sustainable financial model. The decisions outlined are intentional steps to, first, strengthen our long-term financial resilience, improve the predictability and stability of our overall revenues and expenditures, and position Morgantown for future opportunity, innovation, and responsible growth. This budget is designed not only to meet current needs, but also ensure that the city remains financially sustainable for many years ahead. Now, I'm going to address the elephant in the room with this one. This is a little bit of background information. Now remember, back in fiscal year 2026, we conducted a detailed review of the city's historical year-end carryover methodology. This analysis identified inconsistencies between the cash basis and the modified accrual basis of accounting calculations used in previous years to calculate our carryovers. Correcting this methodology recalibrated our fiscal year carryover from an early estimate of almost $6 million to an actual $2.72 million, which is a $3.2 million variance. Importantly, this adjustment was not the result of overspending or revenue underperformance. It reflects a more accurate, transparent assessment of available resources. This improved practice strengthens our financial integrity and supports more reliable decision-making moving forward. In response to this recalibration, the city has implemented targeted expenditure controls vacancy freezes, adjustment to discretionary spending, and the limited use of the fiscal stabilization fund. These steps have reduced the operational pressures and have preserved service delivery throughout fiscal year 2026. So now, let me make sure I can do this. Okay. First, I want to get into our revenues. Now, our overall broader economic indicators remain cautiously optimistic. Both nationally and state projections show modest economic growth, with Monongalia County continuing to be among West Virginia's top growth areas, which is a good thing. Now, for our revenue trends and projections, you can see here from our figure 1. Now, remember, I'm a very visual person, so when I start talking with my hands, please bear with me a second. So if you're taking a look at our revenues, now this right here, you're going to see from the first chart, we have the first 3 years. We have fiscal year 2023, 24, and 25. We have our current fiscal year, our budget, and then we have our proposed budget for fiscal year 27. Now, if you take your hand and you put it basically like I do, you can see, generally speaking, overall, these revenues remain flat. There's not a lot of variations. And I want to reinforce that here when we start talking about a more longer outlook. So from fiscal year 2018 to our proposed fiscal year 2027, you can see the same flat projection in actual revenues that we have had. Now, there are some bumps, and I'm going to talk about those here shortly. But really what I want to make clear is that our property tax rates remain unchanged. Our projected fiscal year 2027 collections are at $4.4 million, and that has remained steady and constant over the past 10 years. Our municipal sales tax collections, which I'm going to talk about in more detail here shortly, have stabilized at about $2.5 million per quarter. Our fiscal year 27 revenue is projected to be $10.7 million in our municipal sales tax fund. And that revenue has been allocated according to our city ordinance, where 25 is being properly allocated to Bow Park, 25% is allocated to our capital escrow fund, 25% is being allocated to our police and fire pensions, and 25% has been allocated back to our general fund. Now, I'm just going to show you quick here.
John, just one.
Yes, sir. Yep.
One important clarification on the revenue side, and I just
Absolutely.
think it bears noting, and I'll bring it up every time that chart comes up, is those are pre-inflation dollars, right? If we adjust for inflation, the difference between those 2018 and
Yes, sir. You're absolutely correct.
$26 is going to be somewhere on the order of 20 to 25%. So,
Yes, sir.
just important. It's important to me that we take stock of that reality, right? So as we move forward.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, John.
Now, going back to sales tax, and if you remember back a year during this presentation, we were budgeting an expected 10%, or excuse me, an anticipated 10% reduction based off from the information we received from the West Virginia Department of Tax and Finance. That's where they informed us that they were going to change their methodology for determining their boundaries for who is being collected that municipal sales and use tax. Now, we were anticipating a 10% decrease. Let me rephrase that. We budgeted for a 10% decrease based on the recommendations from the West Virginia Department of Tax and Finance. However, and I want to point out here, I know I'm walking away from here, but you can see in the light green, so far we have received 3/4 of that sales tax year to date, and if you compare what we have received the first 3/4 of this fiscal year versus the same 3/4 from our last fiscal year, you can see that we are actually up 6.5% over last year. Now, that doesn't guarantee that we are going to continue on that same trend for our fourth quarter. So after we receive our actual fourth quarter, we will be coming back with a budget revision to make sure that we are reconciling our original budget estimates to our actual. However, for fiscal year '27, we went back to what our actual received sales tax was in fiscal year '25, and we compounded that for the COLA for fiscal year '26 and the expected COLA for fiscal year '27, and that's where we arrived at our $10.7 million for our budget. Does that make sense? Okay. I know that that was a topic that we discussed in detail last year, and I just wanted to point out that we did not or have not experienced that expected dip. That doesn't mean that we won't. We still have one more quarter to come in, but I did wanted to make sure that everyone is fully aware we have not experienced that dip, and we're actually ahead of last year by 6.5%. Now, the next slide that we have, this is our business and occupation tax. Our business and occupation tax is a very substantial revenue to the city, and it comes in two forms. The first form is our regular business and occupation tax, and the second is for our major construction tax. That tax is for projects that are over $5 million occurring within the city. We track that separately and account for that separately because that money has been designated towards our capital projects. Now, if you can, let me go back to my, does this have a pointer?
Maybe up there at the top.
So if you see here, again, taking your hand, you can see that our regular B&O tax is relatively flat. Now, when I say relatively, there are still dips and curves, but you can see generally it's about $14 million per year. Whereas our major construction tax, that does fluctuate depending on what is actually being constructed within the city limits. And you can see it has been higher in previous years, where we are actually in a low period historically over the past 10 years. So I just wanted to point that out. And that out of that B&O construction tax, the major construction, right now we are tracking our number one major project that is going to be contributing towards our fiscal year '27 is the WVU Medicine Eye Institute. We have the Bow Park's Lower Marilla Park project, and there are multiple other WVU medicine renovations that we're currently tracking. So overall, we have a really good idea of what to expect in fiscal year '27. Again, that's just an estimate. It could come in higher, it could come in lower, but from the data that we have currently available, we have a reasonable estimate of what to expect in fiscal year '27, which we have down as is 1.9 million, or is it 2 million? I don't have it in front of me. I'm just looking off the scale here. But however, that's what we're currently projecting for fiscal year '27. Again, we are estimating revenues which we are not expecting to receive until 6 months to a year from now. And when we do receive those actual revenues, if we do have to adjust those estimates, we can do so as a budget revision. Does that make sense? Perfect. Now, the next slide that I want to take a look at, this is our MSF fee. Now, our MSF, or municipal service fee, this is that $6 biweekly or $3 weekly payroll tax that people pay for working inside the city limits. Now, that tax is allocated as follows, and you can kind of see with me, I tried to color code the chart here, so you can see that fee is broke out between an allocation for police and an allocation for streets and public works. Now, the allocation for police is 60% of the overall MSF fee, and out of that 40%, you can see that personnel represents 33 1/3, whereas the police equipment is 6.7%. If you add those together, and again, I'm trying to point at the blue down there at the bottom, you can see that represents the police department's allocation of that revenue. Now, if you take a look at the green, we have the dark green, and it goes lighter as we go up. The first one, the darker green, that's for our public works personnel, which represents 23.6%. And then we get into the public works equipment. And then finally, we get into a big bulk of it, which represents $1.2 million of our estimated MSF fee. That right there, that's for our streets improvements. That helps to go repair those potholes, trying to make sure that our infrastructure is being cared for appropriately. Does that make sense? Okay. And we are estimating our overall MSF fee based on our actual revenues, which we have seen over the past 3 and 5 years. Now,
John,
Yes,
if
ma'am.
I may, before you head into expenses, if I may just briefly talk 2 items related to revenue that, based on Councilor Down's, some of the input that I think is important is yes, when adjusted, that flattened revenue, our purchasing power has gone down. So it's experienced as everything costs increases, which has happened all over the nation. Our ability, when we see flattened revenues, it really comes at a cost of being able to compress purchasing power. So I think we are in a challenging fiscal environment because of those flattening revenues. But I think it's also important and worth noting that to fix that solution is often a challenge as well. Several of our revenue structure is based on, we may be at the caps that are allowable under state statute, or the structure of the way our revenue is built, whether it's flat fees, does not build in a natural incline in the revenue. So while we are taking a more measured and strategic approach to make sure this year we're working to align our ongoing revenues with our ongoing expenses, with the idea of using one-time funds for one-time projects, we will continue to see that pressure without finding some new source of revenue.
And to that end, Jamie, do you know what percentage of our total revenues are constrained by policy?
I do not have a specific percent, but that is something that we would like to put together over the next year to tie down exactly which revenues are constrained by council policy, which revenues are constrained by state policy. We have some of that information of where we can drive some of that information, but I don't have that percentage.
Okay, thank you. And I'll go ahead and ask this one. And how many one-time dollars are we spending?
Sure, absolutely. So this proposed budget that you has in front of you, and that is a major change from our prior philosophy. Director Ferguson mentioned last year's budget was built with an assumption that we would spend those carryover dollars in the tune of about $6 million. So in theory, when they are carryover dollars, they would not be reoccurring, so they should be allocated to one-time expenses. They had been used as a reliance to balance our operational budget. The budget that is presented before you today it allocates $1 million of assumed carryover or use of that one-time fund, and trying to do a balance of one, making sure we're aligning our ongoing, but some recognition of we do expect there to be some reasonable potential possibility of carryover, and working to make sure these changes that we are implementing are not knee-jerk, are as steady as possible. So we thought that it is still responsible to provide some one-time cost of using that, but we will continue as we look forward into the future to reduce that reliance as well.
And it's a vast improvement, so I appreciate that.
excellent. Our fiscal year 27 budget reflects intentional restraint. Expenditures have been deliberately aligned with available resources without eliminating our core services or compromising essential functions. What I'd like to focus on here is, and I want to stress to the point here, we are not defunding any of our current departments. If you take a look here, and I've tried to highlight them in color. And
Hey, John, I think you can grab that smaller one. It'll move along with you.
That's perfect, thank you. Sorry, I like to move around. I'm not a very stable person.
Take it on the run, man.
So when you're taking a look here, again, I want to point out here, this is our total general fund budget. So when you're taking a look by department, you can see that our police department still represents 24% of our total general fund budget. Our fire department, which is our second largest department, represents 20%. And then you can see here, our streets and public works represents 8% of our total budget. Now, out of those are our top 3 departments within general fund. Combined, they represent 52% overall of our general fund. And then here, you can see on the side, we have all of our minor, and I shouldn't call them minor because finance is included in it too. All of our smaller departments, including finance, city manager, city hall, planning and zoning, code enforcement. Still, every single department is very strategically important, but yet when it comes to expenditures, our top 3, again, are our police department, our finance department, our fire department, and our streets and public works. Does that make sense?
And just for clarification, that is just the street part of Public Works. That does not include any of the facilities people. They're covered under City Hall, or of the fleet equipment maintenance people. They're also under a separate budget. So those are still what we often will refer to as engineering and public works, but this is just the street department section of that.
Correct. If we were to count how many that is currently, that is under Damian Davis, we have 4 of them which are currently in our general fund budget. Streets is only one of those 4. Thank you for pointing that out. The next one here, and I'm looking at our total general fund budget in a different perspective. This will show you here by function. For example, again, public safety is 48.2%. Now, if you were to go back to the previous slide and you see 24% and 20% for fire and for police, if we combine those, it's definitely higher than 48.2%. However, there are more within that department, which isn't technically public safety. Some of that is general government services. So this breaks it out, not by department, but by function. But overall, you can still see public safety is 48.2%. Does that make sense to everybody? Now, the next one here, I really do want to point out, and I'm going to go back to the narrative, because first off, I want to highlight for personnel and healthcare. Number 1, the financial, or the fiscal year 27 budget, there are no new positions which are being added. That's extremely important. On top of that, approximately 16 positions which we're currently budgeted for have been frozen as part of our vacancy modeling. Now, this is something new that we're doing this year so that we are dialing in to get a more accurate budget for our overall workforce expenditures. The next item that I want to highlight is that there is a 0 cost of living adjustment included. Now, this is extremely important when it comes to our current workforce. However, it is also important to note that we have built in our step increase. So even though we are looking at a 0% COLA for fiscal year 27, still longevity matters, and the normal step increase that people are expecting is still built into that. Now, if you're taking a look at overall general fund budget, again, I try to color code this as best as I can. When you take a look at the blue, between the dark blue and the light blue, you can see here, and we have approximately 62% of our overall general fund budget is related to our workforce. Our workforce budget represents 62% of the overall general fund budget, with only 38% of that being non-workforce expenditures. Now, this is only general fund, does not include capital escrow or our other funds, but I did want to point out that our workforce budget is significant. So when we start talking about items such as no new positions, we are freezing 16 positions as part of our vacancy modeling, and a 0 cost of living adjustment for fiscal year 27. That is an extremely significant impact to the overall budget. Any questions on that? Okay. Now, I do also want to mention here for health insurance, this year's health insurance is 13% of our over general fund budget. It is a significant portion of our overall expenditures when we do talk about our workforce. There was an increase this year, which we are We are controlling our costs. We are, there was an increase to our healthcare costs of approximately 17% over the prior fiscal year. That is a significant increase, especially when we're talking about 13% of our overall general fund budget is related to health insurance. So I did want to point that out as well. Now, the next slide I want to review, this is the summary of our funding for agency and quasi-government entity requests. Now, if you take a look here, overall, between our capital escrow and our opiate settlement fund, we have $544,500, which is being allocated to our partners and agency requests that we have within our community. These agencies are extremely important to our city, not only to our residents, but as they also help the city function and to provide those necessary services, which the city does not provide itself to the community. And we currently have $544,500 allocated this year towards that. Now, that is a decrease from last year. Just like with all of our other internal departments, every single agency has had a decrease to help us get to that balanced budget. Remember, we're trying to be fiscally responsible. It's not just every single department, every single area, every single dollar matters. We've had to make those hard decisions, and this is a decrease compared to last year. Now, on our next slide, this right here is our summary for funding of public service agencies. The first we have is Bow Park, which also saw a decrease compared to last year. And we also have the public library system, Mountain Line Transit Authority, and the MMPO. Now, we do want to point out that we are still funding our partners in these areas. It's just not at the high levels that they have been accustomed to, if you will. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, the next part of the budget here, now this goes into our capital. So the big highlight here that we want to have is that even though we do have cuts in our departments and in our operating budgets, and also in our capital, we are still delivering, and there are great projects that we are currently funding this year in fiscal year 27. Now, this is just a handful. If you were to take a look at our 5-year capital improvement plan, you will see more detail. But I just wanted to highlight here, you can see, as an example, we have for streets, our public right-of-way improvements, we are still funding $1.2 million. You can see for our fire department, our ladder truck, that truck replacement program, we are funding $375,000 this year for that major purchase. For our Hazel Ruby McQueen Park, we have our River Terrace project, which we have budgeted $350,000. These are just a handful of the items that are listed in your fiscal year, or excuse me, your 5-year capital improvement plan. But I just want to highlight here, again, we are funding great projects. These projects are going to generate great benefits to our community, and we are happy to have those in there this year.
John, if I may point out just one item, we are so thankful to our partners as well, because some of these projects are grant funded that you see in this budget. So some of these are not just revenue from the city. For example, the Park River Terrace project is a grant-funded project. So these are items on here to illustrate some of the higher dollar items in our capital project, but some of those we are very fortunate to have grants funding as well.
Yes, thank you. Now, looking ahead to our long-term stability, our fiscal year 27 budget represents our next step in a multi-year financial stability effort. Over the next 3 to 5 years, the city will prioritize rebuilding our general fund and financial stabilization reserves. We are aligning reoccurring revenues with reoccurring expenditures. We are evaluating revenue flexibility within the statutory limits, and the city manager already hit on those a little bit. We are strengthening our capital planning and reducing our resilience on one-time funds. Those are huge steps that we are making this year. In the short term, our actions include continued vacancy freezes, limits on discretionary spending, evaluation of our revenue compliance to support this strategic plan. Our success in this budget, it will not be measured solely by achieving balance. It will be measured by maintaining emergency response standards, improving forecasting precision, and stabilizing our healthcare reserves, while also safeguarding our infrastructure. Overall, this is the first step in our 3 to 5 year plan to get us back on track. That's really what this is. Now, in conclusion, you can see here I have a summary of all the different budgets which we have in front of you for your consideration. Again, we have our general fund, we have our municipal airport fund, our municipal sales and use tax fund, Woodburn. I know I didn't hit on every single one of those. Our general fund is our largest and most significant fund. That's why we hit so much on that. However, you can see we have 7 different funds, operating funds here in front of you, including our capital escrow fund. Overall combined, you can see we are just, I'm trying to add those up in my head, we're about $50 to $55 million total combined between all of the different funds. And again, you have the details in front of you. If you have any questions that you would like to review in detail, I brought everything I thought I could bring with me, so I'm prepared.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what questions do you have? What can I answer for you? How can I help?
Certainly, if I can just make a couple of closing comments from a staff perspective, really highlighting some of the stuff that John has already talked about, but making sure that we're reemphasizing. I do want to thank council again, being engaged throughout this whole process and open to that dialogue, especially given the tough fiscal year, and certainly the staff that has put in countless hours and effort into putting this budget together. So even though this is a challenging fiscal environment, and we've talked about some of those factors that this year are leading to this, the city remains strong, and I think that's important to note. Our employees continue to deliver essential services with professionalism and dedication. There are difficult decisions that were made to provide a balanced budget, but I do believe, as John indicated, this is moving towards a more structurally balanced and forward-looking budget. I want to reiterate that we are not proposing to eliminate major programs. We are not reducing active personnel. We are maintaining our core services. We are preserving our emergency response standards. We're continuing to make modest investments in infrastructure, equipment, and our long-term capital improvements. And we are protecting our ability to respond, serve, and lead this community. What we are doing is adjusting. We're freezing the positions. We're deferring non-essential expenses. We're strengthening our forecasting. We're modernizing some of our practices. So we're making these deliberate decisions now so that we don't face more difficult decisions in the future. And every department and every partner agency has shared that responsibility in making sure that we're aligning our revenues and expenses. So I believe this proposed budget shows a commitment to that fiscal responsibility, but as well to our public service. So next steps in the process, and certainly we will open it and take any questions or any feedback, but what you will see come before you all at your next March 3rd meeting will be a first reading of the budget, as well as the resolution adopting the capital plan. And then in the second meeting in March, you will see a second reading of the budget, as well as a resolution adopting the remaining of the funds. And we do that, and we often, I know we've talked about this, but we often see small changes between those as we get the tax assessors' estimates in. We want to make sure the final budget is accurate as possible. So while this is a nice, solid, final draft, certainly we are at a point where we can make some final adjustments, but we hope that we've presented a budget for you all tonight that you will be able to ultimately support moving forward.
Discussion.
John, how much is our fiscal stabilization fund today?
Tell you exactly, sir. My apologies. As of this morning, $3,469,913.42.
Cool. And so we're 4 months from the end of the fiscal year. How do we forecast now in terms of having to tap the fiscal stabilization fund for the,
At our last projection, we are not currently anticipating having to draw off from the financial stabilization fund, that $2 million.
that's great. Good. That's good news. Thank you.
We're making progress.
Sorry, not related, not necessarily related to this budget, but certainly related to budgeting.
I will put the caveat, certainly, we recognize that sometimes unexpected expenses, but we continue to make sure that we're
Understood.
trying to
Understood.
tighten that.
Understood. As of today.
Yes, sir.
I've talked budget until I'm blue in the face, I'm good.
One,
We've had so many meetings.
one of the things that, evaluating, returns on investment that we certainly talked about is the police training facility. Is that something that we're going to continue to evaluate as the year goes on?
Yes, certainly, that is an item that we will continue to evaluate as we look at the revenue amount that is coming in for that facility versus the expense. There is a gap in those, and so we want to be, as we are being mindful and looking at the way we're spending every dollar, making sure that we are accounting for every piece that matters to that equation so that we can ultimately make a productive decision, but there absolutely is continued evaluation on that facility.
Appreciate that.
Anything else? I want to make a comment about the police training center. It struck me in the budget that we pay more for our police training center in terms of the $240,000 than we do the entire fleet of police vehicles, the entire fleet in terms of maintenance. So we could buy a second fleet of police vehicles for the price that we're paying for this police training center. The other thing that struck me is coming into the 2023 fiscal year, we had a fully operational center. We're coming in 2024 fiscal year, and our training budget, which we expect to decrease because we have an in-house facility at this point, ballooned by 45%. It went from $18,733 to $27,285. So we have a dedicated facility that's meant to offset these costs, you would hope, since we're paying for an entire fleet of vehicles, more than that. And we have an increase in training of 45% year over year. That's, I think, by any metric, it's not working as intended. I don't know how we continue to justify the cost of it, especially given what, like I just said. I think that there's a lot of ways in which this budget is ballooned, and I think we can attribute a lot of that to inflation, things of that nature. But I think a lot of it we can attribute to kind of short-sighted decisions. And I think that's one that's glaring, but it's not one, and it's one that we need to address sooner than later. But that would be my comment on that particular subject. Any further discussion? Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Yes, I'm a terrible speaker.
You do more than that.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is a presentation on the Board of Education levy. I believe we have a speaker here for that today.
Yes, we do. If you give me a moment, I am going to swap the
Sure.
presentation.
We're swapping presentation.
They're so excited for municipal government now, like, seeing budget presentations.
She had some good questions. Yeah, she's,
Jumped feet
I
first.
don't understand most of that last.
I just-
neither did I until about a year ago.
We,
Awesome. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Bobby Godby. My pronouns are she, her, and I live in Second Ward.
My name is Addie. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a fourth grader at Mountain View Elementary.
And we're here on behalf of the Community for Monongalia County Schools, which is a coalition of educators, parents, business leaders, and community members.
And we're here to ask for your support in renewing the Monongalia Schools Access Levy.
The Monongalia County Schools Excess Levy.
Sorry.
That's okay. We'll say that a couple times fast, so we'll get going. We can go to the next slide, please. So, big picture, what is the Monongalia County Schools Excess Levy? It provides direct local funding to our county schools beyond what the state school budget funding formula provides. The levy is assessed on property taxes with the rate unchanged from the last 4 years. The levy is currently approved through June 2027 and is up for renewal by a countywide vote during the primary election on May 12th, 2026. Sorry, we'll go back to the slide before. Thank you. So some key points when we think about the big picture with the Mon County Schools Excess Levy. Approximately 21% of the operating budget is funded from the excess levy. That's the total county school budget, about 21%. That's approximately $35.6 million in net taxes received annually to support students, staff, and schools. The school levy, so this part is important as well, has historically passed with ease around 78% the last time it was up for election. However, it has passed for the past 53 years. This is obviously something that has received pretty massive nonpartisan support over the last 5 decades here in Mon County. However, this is a new election season and new election format where it's not a special election, it's actually going to be on the primary ballot. So that's new, which is a much broader voting base than what we've had in the past with those special elections. And it's important to note too, when we think about the excess levy, levies typically are for, often people ask, levies typically are for learning, bonds are typically for buildings, so the levy actually has nothing to do with the bond that was up for passage in 2024 related to the Renaissance Academy, so that's an important note to make as well. We can go to the next slide.
The excess levy impacts 5 main pillars: community impact, safety and well-being, academic excellence, and extracurricular programs, and economic impact.
Awesome. So we'll dive into each one of those pillars one by one. So when we think about community impact, we're really talking about building community and supporting Mon County working families. This is everything from nutrition and food security, supporting community facilities and spaces, 4-H and youth development, access to public libraries, after school and summer programming. You can see some key data points there as well. So over a 5-year period, we've seen about $448,000 for elementary playgrounds, upgrades, and maintenance, $80,000 in Monongalia County Public Library partnerships and access, and then around $40,000 for 4-H youth development programs. All of this funds also goes to fund summer programs and after-school programs like Avalanche and Afternoon Adventures, both of which Addie is a proud member of. Safety and well-being. So this is not just keeping our students safe, which is obviously critical, but also thinking about the holistic and wraparound services that support healthy, safe, and supported kiddos. Some of the key elements here that we want to highlight: funding from the excess levy goes to school nurses, both training and staffing, school safety personnel with resource officers in elementary, middle, and high school, transportation safety, safe buildings and facilities, and of course, student services and mental health. Some key investment data here is over about $1.5 million for student services. This is full wraparound support, intervention, and mental health services as well. Seeing those school resource officers and attendance improvement services, guidance services, tools, and student supports. As I mentioned, those nurses trainings, licenses and supplies. We've seen about $2 million for operations for school facilities, repairs, and safety improvements, and about $600,000 for student transportation, which includes acquisition of and operation maintenance of school buses as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. Academic excellence. As you all know, Mon County is continuously ranked as one of West Virginia's best. We see top rankings in performance, teacher quality and retention, also instructional resources and curriculum, and successful student outcomes. We continuously place in the top in terms of our performance, our testing, as well as advanced placement scores. From an investment standpoint, we've seen $1.5 million for instructional materials, supplies, textbooks, equipment, those types of things. $1.25 million for technology equipment, supplies and services. About $175,000 for library, media center books, supplies, equipment, and services, and about $145,000 for math, science supplies, equipment, and classroom and labs. There's debate about which is the next one. Economic impact, we're right on schedule. When we think about economic impact, that's obviously not just building a strong today, but building tomorrow's workforce as well. When we think about strong schools and strong communities and ensuring that our workforce pipeline is well educated and credentialed for the future, today's students are tomorrow's workers and are tomorrow's Mon County residents and voters. So thinking through the economic impact with the excess levy, thinking through developing the development pipeline, business attraction and retention, property value protection, the number one driver of property value is actually school rankings. Also local and county impact, career and college readiness. So you can see some key stats there, not only in terms of how it drives our local economies, but also the benefits to our students and staff as well. We've seen about $20.4 million in supplemental professional and service personnel salaries and benefits to Mon County school staff. So $20.4 million for additional professional services for our staff and positions as well. That's about 125 additional positions beyond what's allocated in our state funding. So those are, our neighbors and our teachers and our staff members in Mon County schools working with our learners. And about $100,000 for Mon County Technical Education Center, or MTech, which is one of our leading pipelines for workforce here in the county as well. And our last pillar here is those extracurricular programs, which are really the benefits that extend beyond kind of academics, thinking about arts and athletics. About $1.25 million in extracurricular activities, recreation and athletics. That's everything from coaches and strength coaches, athletic trainers. It includes free admission to home games and plays and music concerts for our learners who are in the classroom and supporting their classmates. As well as field and facility rentals, security, EMS, extracurricular bus trips, and high school facilities and upgrades. And about $250,000 for arts, music, and drama programs. So when we talk about strong schools, building strong communities, this is what we mean.
How you can help. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Share your support with your networks and on your official pages. Join the community by emailing monschoollevy@gmail.com. Join us for the levy kickoff this Thursday, February 26, 2026. The levy kickoff is at the Co-op at 131 Pleasant Street from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. We also will have a spring student showcase where we'll highlight different student arts and athletic groups from across the county while sharing information about the levy. The spring student showcase is Sunday, April 12th from 2026 from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. at University High School. Thank you for your time and support.
Thank you very much. We can stay for a few questions if you have, and if we don't have answers, we can get them for you.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you for coming and presenting.
Awesome. Thank you very much, team. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, we have item C, housing initiatives discussion, feedback from listening sessions. We have Mr. Yeager here to present.
should work for you.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor, members of council, hope you're doing well. Thank you for giving me an opportunity tonight to provide an update on our initial efforts to address the housing affordability issues in the community. While a summary report of our stakeholder meetings and exploration sessions are in your packet, I'm going to be presenting from the slides on the screen, which you should have received from the city clerk's office. So the first slide here is basically the roadmap, where we started with the resolution from City Council in 2024 to where we are today, presenting the summary report and the action items that are listed in it. In more recent times, the city administration facilitated 4 stakeholder meetings with housing development professionals, social service providers, and local home builders in January 2026, and hosted 2 listening sessions to garner feedback from the community under consideration. I'd like to thank everyone who participated in that planning process, as it included more than 40 area residents, and many members of council participated as well. We thank you for that. I'd also like to thank all of our team that participated and helped facilitate the stakeholder meetings and the different sessions that we had. So the first thing that we did, we had several stakeholder meetings, and our conversation kind of focused on two real questions. What are the barriers to attainable housing, and thoughts on the potential policies and programs that were presented to council last year in terms of policy considerations. The result of that was basically 6 topic areas came about: housing cost burden and market pressures, rental housing availability and stability, infrastructure, transportation, and utilities, specifically related to higher energy costs and other additional costs related to poor condition of some of our housing stock as it relates to insulation and weatherization, regulatory and development barriers, particularly looking at the cost of developing on land in the community, as well as some of our zoning requirements regarding setbacks, minimum lot size, and some of those things. Workforce capacity and constraints. Our skilled labor force is decreasing. That was mentioned several times in our stakeholder meetings, and that's really putting a constraint on what our local builders are able to do in terms of capacity, and makes them reprioritize what projects they end up taking on in order to make a decent return for themselves and the people that they employ. And lastly, financial literacy. That was a really big discussion that came up in several of the stakeholder meetings, and the good work that many of our social service providers and housing professionals are doing to try to address those issues. The kind of key takeaway from that was that we, strong leadership, strategic investments, regulatory reform, sustained engagement, and collaboration across multiple sectors need to be done in order to positively address this issue. Key observations from the exploration sessions that we had. Let's see here, to that page. Key observations from those sessions included support for programs that aim to preserve and improve existing housing stock. This includes developing programs that help income-eligible households make critical repairs to their homes, as well as incentives that encourage more rental units to be available at price points that low and moderate income households can afford. Participants also expressed a strong interest in learning more about community land trusts and how they can positively contribute to homeownership opportunities by discounting the price of the land in the acquisition of single-family dwellings through long-term lease agreements. Finally, identifying opportunities to rehabilitate and repurpose underutilized structures, as well as ongoing efforts to mitigate blighted property, was also viewed very favorably both in the stakeholder sessions as well as the exploration sessions with the public. In terms of policies and programs that were received well by participants, but where implementation challenges were noted, they included inclusionary zoning practices, updates to the city's zoning ordinance to focus more on the built environment rather than regulating traditional land use classifications or a hybrid approach, reducing minimum parking requirements in targeted areas where alternative modes of transportation are valuable. And while the construction of new dwelling units through developer-based financial incentives or the establishment of an accessory dwelling units was also viewed positively, participants expressed a desire to make sure these programs did not adversely impact neighborhood character or cohesion, and that the units constructed met current local housing needs. So given all this information and the good work being done by yourselves and others on this to date, the administration has developed several short-term, medium, and long-term action items they'd like to present now. First one being accessory dwelling units. So working with Councilor Downs, our city attorney, and a small working group, the administration has put forward an ordinance that would enable accessory dwelling units to be established on the same parcels as a single-family dwelling housing unit, duplex, triplex, townhome, or other housing unit. In doing so, an accessory dwelling unit would be permitted as an attached or detached unit and defined as the city's, and to be defined as such in the city's permitted land use table in the R1 and R1A zoning districts. Other potential considerations expressed at the stakeholder and exploration sessions focused on trying to make sure that these new units would be created to create more affordable housing opportunities, and that they cater not just to students, but to a variety of households at different stages of their lives. And so that will be discussed later on your agenda here this evening. The next one that we're working on and have a rough draft, but still needs some modification to it, is what we are calling a density bonus. Staff has also recommended that council consider developing an inclusionary zoning program that encourages the development or setting aside of more affordable housing units in mixed use or multifamily housing projects by giving eligible projects a density bonus. For example, for making at least 10% of the total number of new units available on a project to income eligible households based on their area median income, or AMI, thresholds of course to be determined, a developer would be permitted to increase the maximum height of the structures in specific districts. So for example, the images up here on your screen, on the left, it shows what would be permitted by right now on a vacant piece of land that's located in a B1 district in terms of massing where potentially parking could be located. The image on the right-hand side is an example of what would be permitted with the density bonus if a certain number, 10%, whatever that number would be set aside for affordable housing units. They would be able to increase the height of their structure 12 to 15 feet, let's just say. And so the purpose of this is to kind of show, in terms of massing, that it's not going to be adversely impacting our neighborhood, or some of the concerns I think that were raised at both the stakeholder sessions as well as the exploration sessions about neighborhood character, cohesion, and long-term viability. I just wanted to thank our geospatial manager, Marvin Davis, for developing the models that you see on the screen using our ESRI's urban program. I believe, again, the models show that this type of program would not adversely impact the built environment, and that if it was limited primarily to commercial districts or multifamily districts. And that's kind of the thought process with staff now, is that's where we would take that first step into inclusionary zoning practices or incentives that would allow for more housing units to be affordable. Additional incentives to consider would be to also look at increasing the maximum lot coverage depending on the zoning district that it's in, as well as decreasing the minimum off-street parking requirements. Again, in these examples, the assumptions being made is that the parking is going to be behind the structure. The first floor would be commercial uses and the upper floors would be residential. In terms of medium and long-term action items, owner-occupied rehabilitation, that was talked both at the exploration session and the stakeholder meetings. This program would enable income-eligible households to make critical repairs to their home, by extension helping preserve the city's aging housing stock. It could also function as a low-interest loan where payments could be put back into the program to fund additional projects, or be set up as a deferred loan that would be forgiven over time. Considerations here again include the threshold for eligibility, who would be eligible to apply and receive this assistance, as well as the type of loan structure that I just mentioned. With regard to community land trusts, there was a lot of interest from participants in exploring this development strategy further, as it could not only provide safe and decent housing opportunities to income-eligible households, but also help those households generate wealth for their families long-term. This type of program has been implemented in communities across the country to encourage homeownership by mitigating the high costs associated with appreciating property values. While income-eligible household may purchase a single-family dwelling from a community land trust, the trust retains the ownership of the property and leases it to the household for an extended period of time. And while a household may put their dwelling unit up for sale and realize some of the appreciated value associated with that property, the dwelling must be sold to another income-eligible household, and ownership of the land remains with the trust, making it long-term being affordable and being made available to income-eligible households. Staff plan to meet next month with local lending institutions to learn more about how this is actually worked out in their world and see, because there was a couple questions that came up at the exploration session, is how are, conventional loans work through when you have this kind of arrangement set up, and that's a really good question that we need to address because other people are doing it. I'm not sure necessarily what the state's restrictions may be, but we're going to start meeting with some of those folks and have those conversations. The Home Partnership Program, there was a lot of interest in developing policies and programs that preserve the city's aging housing stock and make more units available to households so they are not cost burden. Owner-occupied housing rehab, adaptive reuse, and rental assistance programs were reviewed very positively by people in the different exploration and stakeholder meetings. While similar programs have been implemented here in West Virginia, they require a dedicated funding source. In addition to exploring opportunities to develop those local funding sources here, the city should consider making application to participate in the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's Home Partnership Program. This will include identifying potential barriers and working with local stakeholders to overcome these challenges, such as long-term administration of this type of program. In West Virginia, more specifically, the city of Parkersburg partnered with the Wood County and the city of Vienna to form what is called the Parkersburg-Wood County Home Consortium. In their particular program, they utilized their annual allocation from HUD, which is in addition to CDBG funds, Community Development Block Grant funds, to do the following. They support an owner-occupied rehab loan program, they support a down payment assistance program, and a rental assistance program across their respective jurisdictions, so both cities and the county. According to the city's website, for instance, the rental rehab program may provide up to 50% of the eligible cost of rehab in the form of a 0% interest deferred and forgivable loan if the property is made available to income-eligible households, again, setting the threshold 60-80% AMI, for at least 5 years. And that's what their minimum threshold is, and that's how their terms are set. Loans may range from $5,000 to $15,000, and again, they're deferred over time, with the purpose of trying to encourage more property owners to participate in other housing programs to get their units up to code, and to say, if you're willing to go down this journey with us, here's the incentive. We'll forgive what investments you're putting into the property, at least from our side of the project. So if it's a $50,000 project, or let's say it's a $10,000 project, 50%, the $5,000 would be forgiven over time as part of improvements to the property. The other thing that's coming up is an update to the SALDO and zoning ordinances. I kind of alluded this in the, I believe, the executive summary and the summary report, but in keeping with the city's comprehensive plan and comments received from the public input process, which there was interest in looking at zoning, traditional zoning versus form-based code and the hybrid approach, city staff plan to initiate a planning process in the second quarter of 2026 to start updating both land development documents, which will be a very involved undertaking, which will involve planning commission and many meetings in the communities. If you're trying to overhaul the city's zoning ordinance and the regulations that govern how people can use their properties in the future, it's going to be an involved process, but one that we're looking forward to. This effort will address a variety of issues, including where and how different development typologies are permitted by right or conditional use. It will also be a good time to look holistically at some of the potential barriers to development that were discussed in the informational meetings, such as the minimum lot size requirements, off-street parking requirements, minimum lot size. So this is the time where we'll take a look at that holistically and see what makes sense for our community and how can we actually implement it going forward, both from a zoning perspective as well as from the land development subdivision side of the house. So in conclusion, while the challenges related to housing affordability continue to grow in rural and urban communities, the city of Morgantown is fortunate to have our elected officials, city administration, and local stakeholders engaged in the issue. Going forward, our team will keep city administration and council updated on our efforts and help the community preserve and create attainable housing. I will say from the stakeholder meetings, the folks who participated in those were very appreciative I'm not sure if they have the opportunity to convene as much as they probably would like to, but they really enjoyed the conversations. We kind of set some guardrails in terms of what we wanted to talk about, but they, it should be one of many conversations going forward in the future, not just a kind of one and done type of situation. So I appreciate everybody who's involved in both the stakeholder meetings and the exploration sessions, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
So thank you, Ricky, if I may, and thank you for all of the continued efforts as we move these things forward. So to come back to our workshop discussion a little bit earlier, the vision of, we hear these public engagements, we hear these feedbacks on some of these items. What we would be looking for council on next steps is we have summarized some of the policy items that may be considered. Certainly in this one, we've already had some working active engagement. So tonight we do have an item related to ADUs that we will be prepared to present for your consideration next month. And thank you for the collaboration on that item. And as Ricky mentioned, we also have an additional item related to density bonuses that we, if interested from council, if that's something that sounds like a policy you would like to see before you, could be close to a draft version for your all's review. And then the next step, of course, is the zoning and the saldo updates, and staff is working through the RFP. But council has heard some additional items as we look forward. So we would have to look for funding opportunities, but we would look to open the discussion tonight, not only any questions that you have for staff, but as you see some of these items, we have the ADU, we have some things moving forward, which areas you would like to see us prioritize and continue to investigate further on this item if there's any further direction as we work together.
Thank you, Sam.
Discussion?
Okay.
You want to start?
I'll start. Thanks, Ricky. Appreciate the sessions. They were I thought well conducted, and it was just good to see and good to interact with the people that attended. Inclusionary zoning. I appreciate that being something near term, but I caution us to not get the cart in front of the horse here, because one of the big concerns I see with inclusionary zoning, and you said it, is our zoning code. And sure, I see potential for self-defeating restrictions. Right, and you know what I'm talking about, right? Because you said, we go into a B1 and all of a sudden we've got a first floor requirement for business occupancy, and we may not, it may not be it may be zone B1, but it may not be in an area that's going to effectively operate with a first floor business requirement. There are a number of different buildings that have been built around the city that I can point to, and I won't point any one of them out, but point to that were built in B-zone districts that have first floor business requirements that are completely vacant. And those investors have been materially harmed by that requirement, and I see the same potential here. So I think it's not a reason to not do this, but it's something that we need to be specifically deliberate about as if we go down that path.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
I'm thrilled to jump into the zoning overhaul. I think that's a drum I've been beating for a long time through my position on the Planning Commission. I look forward to participating in that process. I've long believed that our land use table is overly complicated, and
as we discussed yesterday.
As we talked about yesterday, our requirements just don't make sense. At the Planning Commission the last Planning Commission meeting, whenever that was, time flies, we talked about the townhomes at the airport and how many zoning variances they had to request, because when our zoning code was written, it did not contemplate that a townhome would be sold. It would essentially assume one owner and it would be rented. So then our setback and our lot size and all of these, like, these people had to go to the BZA and get half a dozen variance requests because they intend to build some townhomes that are going to be sold. It's all, I said during the planning commission meeting, like, oh my gosh, it's almost like we never actually wanted townhomes. And we know that that's an important piece of overall housing stock. So yeah, I'm looking forward to going into some of that. I think I probably have more questions when we get into our items for discussion, but.
Sure. So, a couple things. I appreciate these short-term goals and long-term goals, medium to long and long-term goals. Most of these, I think, are helpful. They relieve some supply challenges. And that's good. But the one that makes an impact of any kind is the community land trust. The only way to reduce your housing costs is to decommodify it. And that's what the community land trusts do, right? The homes are not treated as commodities within this, as explicitly, they're not. And they're places where people can live. Burlington, Vermont has a really strong one. You may have, I think it spans like 4 or 5 counties or something like that in Vermont. It started in Burlington, but it's larger than that. And it was spearheaded by city government and helped to start by their city government, but obviously this isn't, I don't think a community land trust is something that we can administer or should have too much of a business administering ourselves. Maybe we have some stakeholder input on their board, something like that. Right. But I think that is the key and the only tool that actually brings about some measure of affordability for people. All of these things are Band-Aids otherwise. They are things that look at supply side and try to make sure that there is more supply or some of the supply is affordable. I mean, a community land trust does that as well, right? But it makes it permanently affordable forever. So I think we should be like really intentional about trying to find partnerships that will create that. Our RFPs, things that say that we're very serious about forming an organization and fostering a community land trust in our community. And making sure that it, stays sustainable and grows over time. Because again, I don't think any of these, unfortunately, are going to address housing affordability in a substantial way. Otherwise, the other part of this is, I appreciate that you brought up the kind of partnership that Wood County has with Parkersburg and Vienna. I've looked at several HUD grants, and home is particularly one of them, that we are like kind of in gray areas for and don't necessarily qualify for because of our size. It's kind of like we're not small enough and not big enough. But if we were to go in with like Granville, Star City, Westover, and the county, there's all kinds of opportunities that we could be having for federal dollars, and we don't. So it's, I think, like super important that, again, we get with our stakeholders and try to make sure that that happens. I know Parkersburg has like a really, really close relationship with Vienna. You go there and it's not, people don't even really necessarily see a difference in the cities. And they work together all the time on different things. Not just this, but like economic development, stuff like that. So I think that would be like a good place for us to start to try to talk about our metropolitan area and how we're like trying to grow as a metropolitan area. But yeah, I appreciate all the stuff you brought here, Ricky. I think it's worthwhile to try to engage with FMHA, other other partners about a community land trust. And I think that that's the key to anything that we're going to try to do. And we need to seriously think about how we're using our land and what we're using it for and how we can be fostering those kind of activities. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I don't believe I have any comments or questions at the moment, but I just want to thank you for all, and the entire department, for all the work on this. I just appreciate having a little bit more of a focus on, I mean, just affordable housing in general, but especially income-based, and just keeping those folks in mind. I appreciate that this council and staff has prioritized that right now. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks.
One additional comment on adaptive reuse, and it's something that Ricky, you and Drew and I have talked about a lot lately, but it bears mentioning here. I mean, adaptive reuse is a fantastic tool and endeavor, but it becomes prohibitively more and more difficult as codes evolve. So, I mean, being very intentional, the international existing building code exists for a reason. So being very intentional about using the IEBC everywhere we can. And I know code enforcement makes that a priority, but making, it to the extent that we continue to do that, it makes adaptive reuse more attainable than trying to follow new building code for something that may have been built 100 years ago.
Thank you, sir.
I just would like to say that I appreciate the variety of approaches, and although some approaches might be more of a ultimate long-term solution, that using adaptive reuse whenever we can, making some places more density where parking allows, modifying our parking and encouraging people to use other kinds of transportation. Anything that we can do to make use, because we're a pretty built out place, and we have lots of older housing stock and older buildings, and people who really do want to live in the core and in the neighborhoods. And so if we can make those places more usable, we'll have fewer vacant buildings and more people living there and living here. So wherever it is that they choose to live. But I think that all of these approaches and working on the zoning code to support them is a great idea. So I appreciate the multiple approaches here and the fact that we're getting started on some of them, and some of them will just take a little bit more time. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other further discussion or questions for Ricky?
That was a lot of work. Thank you, Ricky.
For the team. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ricky. Appreciate you. All right, and up next we have targeted building permit processing timelines.
Certainly, while we're transitioning slides and giving Ricky just a moment to breathe, this item is brought before you all just as a continued discussion and update it as we look to lean into our business community and how we develop. One of the items that was identified is how do we get through our permit process in a way that is a little bit more streamlined. So that's always a discussion item that we're having, and part of that is let's have some open and transparent discussions related to timelines. And so Ricky and the team will talk about the process that's gone in, and I view this as the first step in those processes as we continue, so certainly as we establish timelines, the next step is how do we continue to improve those timelines. But we're certainly wanting to bring before you all a outline of some of the great work that's been done to say, let's look at this process and see what we can do.
Awesome. Again, thank you. I'll kind of provide a higher level, and then Drew's going to work into the process where we got ourselves today. So as you're all aware, the city transitioned from a paper-based system in 2024, and despite those early challenges and substantial learning curve for our customers as well as staff, this new system has significantly improved the efficiency, record retention, interdepartmental collaboration, and coordination on building permit and land development projects. To hold ourselves accountable and provide a consistent level of service, city staff from multiple departments collaborated throughout 2024 and 2025 to establish standardized reviews timelines for 55 permit applications. While our chief building official will explain how staff came to such determinations in a moment, our targeted timelines for review were generally deemed reasonable by the local contractors and several stakeholders meetings we had regarding this effort. As such, we are pleased to put forward this proposal before you for further comment and look forward to your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricky. Councilors, happy to be here before you again tonight to present a little bit about the process under which we developed our proposed targeted review timelines for, as Ricky mentioned, some 55 different types of applications across the city, from finance to fire permits, building permits, planning and zoning permits, so on and so forth. As he mentioned, in 2024, we transitioned to the online permitting system for building permits and other applications as well. Sometime after that, once staff and members of the public became a little bit more comfortable with the program, we realized the importance and the necessity for really developing some clear and concise targets that we wanted to provide for public expectation, and also for some guardrails for staff, all right? So we could develop a metric to check our own self and make sure that we're performing to the best of our ability within a reasonable time frame. In doing so, the process involved developing a spreadsheet, simply capturing all the different types of applications, distributing that to supervisors and department heads from all the city departments with purview in a review process or an application process, and then asking them to provide the fastest turnaround for review and approval of an application, and also the longest anticipated turnaround. And the variables are wide-ranging: staff capacity, staff levels, legal processes that are established that specify certain timelines that have to be observed, and so on and so forth. The result of that, and I would note that this started in probably December of 2024. So we've been working and meeting with our constituents and stakeholders across the community to have conversations and get some data, reach out to other municipalities and counties with what they do in their process to establish some parameters here. But essentially, we compiled the data from each department, developed an average, and then also identified the minimums and maximums across the range. Some of that, again, was based on legal processes, right? So it might set like a 45 days for something because it's codified somewhere in state code. So we had to observe that as well. But after that was all prepared, we met and we kind of looked at what the averages were and what those ranges were, and agreed upon some reasonable timelines. So minimum, maximum, right? And we want to provide a range to folks so that when they come to us with an application or with a project, they know ahead of time. I'm going to get it into them a month ahead of time. It'll give me plenty of time for the review to happen, to get feedback, and to get issuance, and get the project moving. Certainly the last thing we want to do is hold somebody up and create problems for everyone, really. So with that said, we did meet with a variety of stakeholders, developers, contractors, residential, commercial, all different types, trade contractors, presented what we had come up with and arrived at some pretty solid feedback and support for what was proposed. I think it was well received. And I did also reach out to several other municipalities and counties through our West Virginia Code Officials Association contacts. I'm a member of that board, so I was able to discuss this with some of those folks more directly. 4 of them responded to our spreadsheet that was sent out to them blank, so we could get some comparables there. And it seems like in reviewing that, we're pretty consistent within what's established in other jurisdictions, although they do not seem to have anything that's published. So I'm optimistic that we are among the first, if not the first, to be reaching out to publish something in terms of expectations for the public and staff both. But I'd be happy to answer any questions related to that process or anything else as they come up.
Discussion.
Somebody else start.
You told me you had all kinds of questions.
I do have a lot of questions.
Sorry, I'll look this way. Louise, do you have permitting questions?
No.
I don't have any questions. So.
One of the things that, and we have great conversations with staff as we continue to peel back the layer of the onions on these processes. We look at regulations, we look at processes, we look at challenges related to resources to develop a consistent product. We talked about this as the kind of a one step, and we continue to move forward. The next item, just to give you all a teaser of some of the things that we're working on, is some of the challenges that we often face is these timelines work very well if a completed permit application is submitted. Sometimes we have that back and forth, what is required, and so the next step that staff is working on, and we met with Councilor Downs the other day to talk about some of this, is what material are we putting out there up front to help navigate and guide for people of what is expected, with the idea of if we can get more complete permit applications in on the front end, that should help us continue to truncate these permit process. So wanted to kind of give that scope of this as a piece of the continuing progress that is going on related to these items. And Ricky, did you have, at least in your all's packet, I know that there is some graphs that summarize some of those clusters. I'm not sure if you want, if it's in the presentation as well.
So this was the permit application process. So this is, if you're a user of the CityWorks portal, this is pretty much the workflow that you're going to see and that staff uses to process permits. So we just wanted to put a little bit more of guidance in terms of each one of those steps, where there may be a holdup, whether the application is approved at intake or needs more information, when fees need to be paid. And then, you know, Drew kind of alluded to this, sometimes when you get a building permit, you may not know that your addition to your building is going to require variance relief. That may be something that you weren't aware of. So then that's kind of like the sidebar. You have to come out and go over to another process, unfortunately, to get the variance relief unless you're willing to modify your application or your plan. And we have those discussions with people all the time. If it's a couple inches, people will say, well, we'll make the modification. But if it's something that they're intent on having and they want to have the encroachment into the required setback, that's why we have a process for variance relief that people can apply for. So again, residential permits. So again, as Drew said, all the different permit application types are listed here. And then the estimated or targeted number of days in which city staff will not only complete their review but issue the building permits, provided that all the relevant information is provided. So we did this, the team did this for residential permits, as well as also commercial permit types, including parent permits or like a commercial remodel and all the trades that would be associated with this, as well as miscellaneous permits. And that's where we get into the land development applications, zoning permits, subdivision permits, and some of those are structured in such a way that we have to give certain deadlines and legal notices in order to facilitate the meetings and the hearings that come with those. So those are accounted for in a lot of them. A lot of the land development processes that you all see in terms of council that come before you in terms of like zoning map amendments and text amendments, those are obviously a longer time period, right? There's a certain time period with the planning commission, they make a recommendation to council, and then there's the process of moving it through council with 2 readings and the 30-day notice requirement in between. So those kind of asterisks are noted in these timelines to say, yes, while we're going to be able to hopefully get this through in 35 days, there's another review process that a zoning, or a text amendment or a zoning map amendment would have to go through.
Yeah, I think the thing I'm noticing the most and have the most questions about or just want to highlight is sort of user experience, right? As a person who takes care of no part of this for my home, it's intimidating, and I know I'm not the only one, and I know you all are well aware of that. So I just want to highlight, and I know you all, Councilor Downs, have had conversations about this on the front end. You know, what does that guidance look like online when they're searching for the application? Is this the right one? Is it clear? Is it, so the guidance on the front end online, and then also just keeping in mind that not everyone is going to be able to go online for whatever reason. So what does the experience look like if they come in and start asking questions?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. So as you've alluded to, this target timeline for review and issuance is a part of the equation, right? So on our building permit website, we currently have a permitting help page that outlines the requirements for what is needed in a submittal for a given project. Working with the city manager and staff and council, we anticipate improving the guidance, updating the website, modernizing things and making it more navigable, and then also including all the components that are needed there. With respect to folks that may not have the ability to get online or need some assistance, we've instituted a permit kiosk in our lobby, so folks are welcome to come in at any point in time or schedule a time to come in and meet with staff, whatever staff is needed, and get assistance with not only the creation of the CityWorks account, but also the application process, including scanning the documents in and attaching them to the case for them so that they can realize the functionality of that system. So this really is a part of the whole, and we hope that it really improves the user experience and also the staff experience. I think we can anticipate saving some time by educating the folks up front that are looking to apply for a given application or permit, and just overall improve the experience of the public.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I do want to commend you guys. This process, while all of it will always be intimidating to a person like me, I can see the effort being put into making this a user-friendly experience, and just even the idea of the permitting department and these timelines being a much softer process than it has been in the past.
I will add that generally the required documents or materials that are needed for a given application, particularly to building permits, hasn't changed in my time here at the city. It was a paper-based system, and probably the folks that would be intimidated now would have been intimidated then. So we'll gladly help anybody with the information that they need, and the goal is to get things out there right on the permitting help page to show these are the documents, and here they are. You know, a lot of the documents are downloadable and fillable forms that can be provided to them and then returned to us as part of the application. I would also like to add that the last time we took a dive into how long we're taking, we looked at a 6-month period, and commercial permits of all types just kind of lumped together to get an average, and the same with residential. And from acceptance, where we have the complete submittal with all the required documents, to issuance was just a little over 6 days. Residential was around 5 days. So I was happy to see those numbers, and I certainly think that we can continue to work improving on those numbers, particularly with larger projects that would typically see more time to do the review due to the nature of the work. I think that even though we have, as we mentioned earlier, some staff positions frozen and some challenges there that we work through with just staffing levels and then capacity of younger staff learning the process, I think we can still overcome those hurdles and provide a good product.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
I had one
I just wanted to say I really have appreciated, I've had some positive comments, including one when I happened to be walking down the street with the city manager, and people have noticed that there's been work done and that there's a little more efficiency happening lately, and have commented on it. And I do think that that issue of people not turning in a full form, a completed form that has all the components in it, has been one of the main issues. And so I appreciate that you're working on that as well, and any kind of cross-training you can do with your younger employees as they develop as employees and can take on various tasks, so that when people aren't in the office, all of these things can still go according to the timelines. That would be great. So I just appreciate all the hard work, because I think it's being noticed. Thanks.
Thank you.
I would also, had a friend that needed to get a roof repaired in a hurry, and the permitting process. I know that it gives like what could be worst case scenario, but he said that the turnaround time was within a couple of days. So I think 3 days is what he said. So I just wanted to let you guys know. I think I called you about that just to commend you all, because I know that a lot of times the compliments don't feed through as quickly as other stuff.
One thing I will add to that point, if ever there's an emergency that requires work to be done, we're working with Councilor Downs. We spoke the other day about this. Under the building code, emergency repairs are allowed to take place without the permit, as long as they're pursued within a reasonable amount of time thereafter. And we certainly are working to prioritize those when they come across the desk, to recognize that people may have had a need over the weekend or overnight to do something that would otherwise require the permit ahead of time. So we'll certainly continue to accommodate that as well.
Yeah. So Drew and Ricky and Jamie, everyone genuinely appreciate the work that's going into this, because it matters so much. I mean, this is like, it's like the engine that, one of the engines that drives economic development, and is how we're funded and how we operate. So it really, really matters. And I genuinely appreciate how much work you all are putting into this. I feel like we're being very conservative in these windows, these timeframes. Though, if I'm being totally honest about it, when I looked at this stuff, I looked at. I think Fairmont was the only published. I think they found some published data. It may have been referenced, but it was a 5 to 10 day generic turnaround time that they published. The ICC and NLC publishes benchmarks that are 5 to 10, 7 to 14 days. Again, generically, you guys went, a level deeper and broke things out more granularly, and I think that's good for transparency, but it can also cause some confusion too. It's difficult when you're talking about, and Ricky's, mentioned that, our code enforcement team is the gold standard for compliance, and I believe that too. And it's difficult when you're balancing compliance and life safety and competitiveness, right, for growth. So it's a fine line you walk. I'll just say that, perfect is always the enemy of good enough. And, I think there are certainly opportunities for us to and communication's always the key. And so as we progress, this is, we're starting with something and we're getting some baselines out there and setting some expectations, and that's great. And I think that's going to be tremendously helpful. But as we progress, I encourage us to challenge ourselves and continue to grow and push ourselves, and through experience that'll come. So Drew, appreciate your leadership. I believe in you, Ricky, the same. So, thank you for hearing us and responding with some collateral around expectation setting.
Thank you for your support and all your comments, and we'll definitely consider everything so we can improve it for everyone moving forward.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Any further discussion, questions? All right. Then at this time, we will move on to our public portion, which is governed by the rules of council. You'll have 4 minutes to speak. We ask that you say your name and address, no personal attacks. And we have a list. You can sign up to speak on the list, but if you're not on the list, you will still be permitted to speak. How many do you have there? Okay. And first up, I have Annie.
Good evening. Annie Cronin, York, Human Rights Commission, and 7th Ward. I'm wearing 2 hats tonight. I was able to make it to the meeting last week because I had to stay home to get a phone call. But I had the meeting playing on my computer monitor, and as I was finishing the phone call, the mayor was launching into a proclamation about Cancer Awareness Month. Cancer Prevention Month. I heard Cancer Awareness Month, and I emitted an inappropriate laugh when I heard that. I think it's great that you did this. Both of my parents died of cancer. My dad when he was 44, I was 16. He didn't catch it till it was on stage, and it's lung cancer. Ripped my heart out, and I still have no idea where I put it. My mother died at 59 from ovarian cancer. Again, didn't check it out until her liver was failing and was end stage and nothing to be done about it. So the Cancer Prevention Month is important, not just for individuals. It's not just the patient it affects. For the patient, it sucks. You're miserable. You may die. It's the people you leave behind that matter. So if you don't care about yourself or you want to put it off, get yourself checked because you love people who are going to miss you quite a bit. So on my phone call, it was my oncology surgeon. He was just describing to me all the horrid ways he's going to eviscerate my body in a lethal fashion with the latest technology. Very exciting. So at the Human Rights Commission meeting, we rearranged our positions some. The vice chair has always said, I don't want to do your job. And so when I said that I would be stepping aside for a bit, not leaving, just moving over, he resigned as vice chair. And so Stephanie Hunt is our new vice chair. I have every confidence that she will do a fine job. And I would be there backseat driving the whole way, and I have all the records and I'll still be writing proclamations. Sorry. They'll be there. I just may not sit through meetings for a while. We have a new secretary, Rochelle Gonzalez. We're in an interesting place because we had a commission built for 7. That for most of the time I've been there over 3 years has had either 3 or 4 commissioners. And we were down to 2 of us. So we've got 4 new people. So thank you for appointing them, because it was nice to have them there, especially the timing worked out quite nicely. And the work will carry on. Sunday night, after telling my kids what was going on, because I sat on it for a while, I sent an email to council, explained what was going on. And the responses I got from each and every one of you were equally compassionate, heartwarming, touching, supportive. And it reminds me who you are. You're the people I know you to be, and I appreciate the respect and support. So thank you. And by the way, these chairs are incredibly uncomfortable. Can we get a new one, please?
Thank you, Annie. All right, next up, we have Ethan Enterline. Did I say that right?
Hello, Ethan Enterline, Local Governance Liaison of WVU's SGA, 1500 Station Street. I just wanted to share an update on something our SGA has been working towards ever since this time last year. About a year ago, those that were serving on the council last year may or may not have remembered. My predecessor, Mimi, came up here and talked to you all about how we had the faculty, staff, and student vote removed from all the universities, all the universities' board of governors in the state. And this especially has impacted WVU. With the Board of Governors, they make decisions on literally everything with the university. And them taking away our vote, that would be me or somebody coming in and being like, okay, wards 1 through 3 can't vote anymore. You can come, but you can't vote on anything. So it really, logically, doesn't make a lot of sense, especially since the university as a whole has things that the faculty, staff, and students are basically the center point of the university. So with them coming in and being able to do certain things and them not being able to have a say when they're experiencing stuff firsthand is kind of, it doesn't seem right. But at the end of the last month, a bill was introduced at the state Senate in order to restore the student vote, and we've taken multiple trips down to Charleston in order to advocate for it. I had the privilege of going down on the second trip to Charleston, my first time there. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like this bill is going to go anywhere. But we're hoping, and some stuff that we've been told is that once, after the midterms next year, once the House and Senate get shaken up a little bit, hopefully we may have another chance at trying to get something else passed in order to restore the votes on our Board of Governors. And I know it's been a state matter, and I know there's a little the city can do about it, but I'm hoping whoever serves as local governance liaison during the term after mine can hopefully work with you, and that you'd have their support in some way, shape, or form. That's all I have in that matter.
Ethan, quickly, what's the bill number?
It's 675.
House bill?
Senate bill.
Okay.
There was a bill in the House that would have restored the student, faculty, and staff, and it got shut down pretty quick. The Senate bill would just restore the student, not the staff and faculty, which isn't the most ideal, I think, but we would take what we could get. But there was a chance, we were advocating for it last week, and I went down and we talked to multiple senators, multiple delegates, and there are some that are really supportive of it. Some of them think it's a conflict of interest, certain things that we've been hearing from different people. But we're hoping that maybe after the midterms, when we have new politicians in there, we can maybe make a different, or have a different outcome at least.
Thank you.
That all? Thank you.
Thanks, Ethan.
All right, if anyone else is wishing to speak, you may do so now. All right, then we will close this public portion and move on to our first item for discussion, which is an ordinance amending Article 1373, non-conforming uses, to provide a process to revive abandoned non-conforming uses.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This is an item requested by council previously. The State Law Zoning Enabling Act provides for the maintenance of non-conforming uses until they are abandoned. It also allows City Council to choose when those non-conforming uses can be extended or enlarged. Council asked for a process to allow people to resume a non-conforming use that had been abandoned, with the idea that it would promote reuse of property more efficiently than people coming and requesting amendments to the zoning text or the zoning map. This ordinance accomplishes that by creating a separate process to apply to revive a pre-existing non-conforming use that had been abandoned. The application goes to the Development Services Department. The ordinance provides for a public notice and a public comment period. Public notice is accomplished by posting at the property and posting a notice in the same way that City Council would publish an agenda so that the public can offer their input on the proposal. Development Services staff reviews that and then issues a recommended decision. The proposal to revive the abandoned non-conforming use can only be granted if the proposed use is consistent with neighborhood character or the comprehensive plan. And both City Council and the applicant have the option to have that recommended decision reviewed in front of council, have council make that decision directly. But if neither of them chooses to do that, the recommended decision becomes the decision, and the application can be approved and the non-conforming use revived. So an option to provide a more streamlined process to get properties back in use, but with some guardrails and some public input process.
Okay, thank you. Discussion?
I think as we're talking about adaptive reuse and other things, increasing our housing stock, this is just allowing reuse to happen without being adaptive, just allowing things to be used as they were built to be used. I don't think we should be penalizing people who have spent more than a year working on their property, renovating their property, only to then find out that they can't use their property. When this has been to council before and we sent it to Planning Commission and asked for a recommendation, Planning Commission is generally in favor, but they said, we don't necessarily want to be the ones making that decision. That should either be council or the Board of Zoning Appeals. So Ryan and I kind of went back to the drawing board, with Director Yeager and said, what would make the most sense? And this is where we landed. It still allows for that public comment and public input piece so that anyone in the neighborhood who has strong feelings about a particular property being used or not being used in that manner has a way to give input in the decision-making process, but essentially allows it to move forward.
Does this refer to the one on Beechhurst that we talked about? Is that?
I'm not sure offhand the specific property you're talking about, but this would be available for any property that is non-conforming under the current zoning ordinance and has been abandoned. It would give people an opportunity to apply to resume that prior non-conforming use.
We've had several properties in the last 6 or 8 months that came to the Planning Commission to rezone from like an R1 to a B because they're built as 3-unit apartment buildings, but R1A doesn't allow for that. So they come to us and ask to rezone when really they just want to use it the way it has always been used in the past.
Like if Jean's had been shut down for a year and then somebody tried to put a bar there again. Yeah, this would allow them to do that without.
Yeah, I support the goal here, and thanks to Ryan and Daniel for including some edits I've made, and I mean returning property to productive use is hugely important, and this tool just makes good pragmatic sense conceptually and in practice. As Danielle said, we've seen a number of use cases that have come forward recently where properties brought back into, again, productive use and provided value to the community, either by business or by providing housing. So, yeah, thanks for bringing this forward.
Move it to an agenda.
How are we, I just have 2 questions. How are we making sure that people, and as a practical matter, know about this so that if they do want to make a comment, they have a comment? Like, are we letting neighborhood associations know, or how are we making sure that this happens I know that we need to do it in a legalistic way, but how do we do it as a practical matter as well?
Councilor, with respect to the giving people notice that they can make a public comment on a particular application, what the ordinance proposes will do is is post notice at the property the same way we do for zoning cases, so that people who are around the area regularly will see that and will then see the option to submit public comments. It will also be posted in the same way public meeting agendas are posted, so it'll be up at the front of City Hall and generally on the website as well. But certainly, staff could establish additional procedures to do outreach to neighborhood associations or other community groups.
So is this noticed in the same way any other variance or change in zoning would be?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is what I figured, but I think if we, not necessarily as part of the ordinance, but because sometimes you miss a neighborhood association and you don't mean to, not you, but it's tricky because sometimes leadership changes or emails change. But it would be nice if we did that as a practical matter when we had an opportunity, because then people would have an opportunity. Because I think most people do want property back into reuse, but every so often there's a use that goes fallow that might be more in keeping with the neighborhood if it does go fallow. So if it does discontinue. So I think I appreciate this, and I think it's an excellent practical solution.
Yeah, I think to Jenny's point, especially in the beginning, since this is a new thing that we are doing, and people may not be aware that it is like, something that could be happening with abandoned property, that like we make sure that we're advertising it a bit more aggressively than we might a zoning change. I know it's probably going to be confusing for the public no matter what, but yeah, I think like, most people are used to, if a property's abandoned for this however long, then it doesn't come back in that same form. So making sure people are aware. And yeah, I think often when we were looking at how we do this, a lot of the examples that we found were people trying to stop doing this and make sure people are adhering to the current zoning code. So it would be, good to make sure the public is aware that this is an option and that it could happen to places that maybe they don't want it to. So.
Well, and to Jenny's point, we are certainly not saying we want every non-conforming use to be allowed to be revived or continued. I think that it's important to look at this as a case-by-case basis. Certainly housing and maybe some neighborhood-based businesses, but I can think of a lot of examples where we would say, nope, you're done.
Yeah, and that's why it's subject to review and approval.
Yeah, so I would move it to an agenda.
Great. Any other further discussion, or are we good to move this to an agenda? All right, consensus, yes? All right. We'll move on to item B, an ordinance authorizing and regulating accessory dwelling units and updating site plan review procedures.
Certainly, as we round out the night, we'll bring Director Yeager back up. He briefly talked about ADUs conceptually in his housing feedback session tonight. But as mentioned, there has been an ordinance that we have been working through that we would like to present a little bit more thoroughly, as well as some additional items that may be considered so that we can bring back a final product or potentially send this to Planning Commission for review.
Thank you, City Manager. I also again want to thank Councilor Downs and City Attorney Simonton on their efforts and leadership on this, as well as the working group that helped put the draft in front of you today. So the ordinance that's for your consideration would create two basically new land use classifications in the permitted land use table. They would include an attached and detached accessory dwelling unit. While the attached ADU would be permitted by right, or could be permitted by right, the detached ADU would require a property owner to apply for and be granted conditional use for approval from the city's Board of Zoning Appeals. Additional standards such as height, setbacks, and off-street parking would be governed through a new supplemental regulation associated with the new uses in the permitted land use table. And while no additional off-street parking spaces would be required to establish an ADU on a permitted parcel of land, an existing parking space that was removed in order to accommodate an ADU would have to be replaced in kind. The proposed ordinance would also amend the permitted land use table associated with the Wiles Hill Gateway Overlay District and bring it into conformance with the new use classifications in 13310501. And finally, all proposed ADUs would be subject to plan review by city staff, as it is the case now for all new single-family dwellings as a type 1 site plan review. Also wanted to mention that this ordinance, in addition to establishing a process to permit ADUs, it would also update the site plan review standards for development projects in our community. More specifically, the proposed update would clarify when a formal site plan review is and is not needed. For example, the construction of a new commercial building or change in use that would require a site plan. A formal site plan review, however, may not be necessary if potential renovations to an existing building did not change the use of the structure in a manner that alters the requirements of the planning and zoning code. While the proposed revisions are designed to clarify and streamline the permitting process, all projects would continue to be subject to the planning and zoning code or applicable. If council finds this proposal desirable, staff requested that it be forwarded to the Planning Commission for review in accordance with the West Virginia State Code. And again, I'd like to thank Councilor Downs for his leadership on this, as well as Ryan. We've talked about these updates, especially on the site plan review, and giving our team more clarity of when things need to be done to streamline our processes, and he took the initiative to make that possible, so much appreciated.
Just two brief items that I would like to add is one that I think is important in the current draft that is before you is this would be considered an expectation of an owner-occupied use for an ADU. So you wouldn't see a situation where a garage is put above a piece of property and it's two rentals. This would be used to increase housing stock for when the primary piece of property is occupied by an owner and then is building an ADU. So I think that that's an important component as we work through this. And then I will ask Ryan to talk very briefly. We are seeing some legislation on this very same topic where there is some proposed legislation that is looking to allow ADUs by right. And so as that moves forward in the process, we could see some needed changes based on some of that law. But I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. Mentioned in your agenda item summary, there are two bills introduced this session that would require municipalities to allow accessory dwelling units in some form or another. One of them, Senate Bill 659, has now passed the Senate, is in House Government Organizations Committee for review. Either of them, if passed, would require some changes, not only to this ordinance, but also to existing zoning codes. Because of the review process for adopting zoning amendments, this will need to go to the Planning Commission for advice on consistency with the comprehensive plan and come back to council for adoption. So we'll know, I think, by the time this comes back to council, whether we need to make any changes to be consistent with state law. But we'll keep monitoring those as you go through this process as well.
Considering we're so close to the end of the legislative session, does it make sense to just wait a few weeks and see what, if anything, passes there? I don't want to waste planning commission time and staff time, like if it's going to need to be rewritten in 3 weeks. We're really close to the end of the session.
I don't know. I mean, I guess, you know, when we put it on an agenda is up to us, right? So I'd be fine.
I think it would be worth looking at bringing it back in April based off of how the session goes.
Maybe like the April Planning Commission agenda, and then be ready for our April Committee of the Whole or whatever?
Well, you don't have to bring it back to committee of the whole, right?
No, we have an April Committee.
Why wouldn't we do March?
Well,
Just because there may be a bill passed out of the legislature that allows these by right in all, I mean, like, how is that?
And ADU would be required.
So if the legislator passes a bill, it would potentially change the wording of ours. So instead of having planning commission look at this twice, just wait to see if the bill passes or doesn't, and then move forward.
and that,
How do we let people know that we like this, but we'd like it to be done in a responsible way? We don't necessarily, it's fine if we do this in April, but I think it would be nice if the legislature were aware of what we're proposing, so that they at least have an opportunity to consider a little bit more responsible use of this opportunity.
Jenny, this is something that the Municipal League has been talking to the legislature about.
Yes.
And they tried to.
For those Friday meetings and talking about.
Yeah, they tried to get amendments for requiring owner occupancy and preserving historic districts. To my knowledge, those weren't amended in at this stage?
There's a committee substitute that's passed the Senate that does preserve protections in historic districts. I believe it removed the prohibition on requiring owner occupancy on the parcel where the ADU is included, so it did make some changes to the end of this draft. Obviously, still in committee and can be changed, and we'll have to look at that more thoroughly. There are some changes from what's in your current ordinance, but not anything that probably would take a great deal of time to amend the ordinance to incorporate.
I'm good with whatever y'all want to do with doing it in April instead. I just think these opportunities work better when they're more specific and targeted. And
So Ryan, if we agree that this is something we want to move to an agenda, do we have the opportunity to amend it?
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
And of course, at this point, the recommended action is refer this to the Planning Commission.
You're going to know. That's actually crossover day.
Well, it's already past 1.
Last day of the session
Oh,
is
yeah.
March 14th.
Yeah, Planning Commission would be March 12th.
I think we should just send it to the planning commission.
If it's on the 12th, you can just send it to the planning commission if your meeting's on the 12th of March. Yeah, it's 2 days before session's over. We'll have a good
let's keep
idea.
it moving.
If it's still in committee, a week before that, it's not going anywhere.
Let's send it to the planning commission.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does this have any language in it, or contemplate, I guess? Does the bill contemplate Airbnbs, short-term rentals?
There's a definition of short-term rental added to the zoning code in this ordinance, and there's a statement in the supplemental conditions that ADUs can be used as rentals, including short-term rentals. Cities do have a limitation in state law under West Virginia Code 8-1-5A that they effectively have to regulate short-term rentals and rentals on the same terms.
Okay.
There's also a notation that any rentals have to comply with the housing code, which means for Morgantown, registration of your rental, inspection for compliance with building code, re-registration every 3 years with inspection and business license and taxes.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, we took great care in crafting this legislation that it really reflects, I think, the balance that we heard from the community and the housing listening sessions, and incorporated that into the legislation. So, I'm confident that we've got something here that is going to work and going to net us some marginal gains in terms of affordable housing and general infill.
All right, so action would be to send it to the planning commission. We're in agreement, correct? All right. See you on the 12th.
None of you will come, it'll just be me.
You're right.
You won't see me on the 12th.
See you on Zoom.
So
Go ahead, Jenny.
We're moving it to an agenda, and it might just be one that's a month later than what we might have.
So Jenny, the plan is to send it to the planning commission's meeting in March on the 12th. That's 2 days before session ends.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's do it.
And then hopefully we can have it back relatively soon after that. All right, we have no executive session tonight, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Second.
So adjourn. Thank you.